29 people in right now. We got a few more people than that registered. We always want to give people a chance to figure out their computer issues and come in. Thank you all, though, for taking time out of your day to join us for another Thursday at 4 webinar. We're going to change things up a little bit this time, too. We're going to do a little bit of interactivity. Part of that is going to be using polls. And we're also going to take a chance to break out into little breakout rooms during this 1 hour meeting. During that time, you may be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on, share some thoughts and ideas with us. So we're looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm joined by Sara Windjue, who, as you can see on the slide, I'm sharing the slide, says she's our leadership and capacity development specialist. She's the newest member of the Extension Lakes team here in Stevens Point. So hopefully you can see Sara on your screen. She might have to unmute herself and wave. There you go.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us.
And also joined by Mike Engelson, who's the executive director of Wisconsin Lakes, a statewide organization for people who love lakes, as well as for lake associations and lake districts.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm Eric Olson. I'm the director of Extension Lakes here in Stevens Point, as well as a lakes outreach specialist with Extension. I've been working in some capacity with Extension now for coming up on 20 years. I'm glad to have you all here today. Working on lake group capacity has sort of been something that Extension Lakes and the university has been doing, sometimes in a less obvious way and sometimes in more obvious ways. Ever since I think the Lake District law was passed in the early 1970s. And so we're excited to have a chance to share some of our thoughts about capacity, as well as to solicit some of your ideas and input as well. I think we still got people trickling in.
Yeah, maybe we can start with a poll as we're continuing to wait for some.
Yeah.
Like Eric mentioned, we'll be using different tools during our time together because we really want to make sure we aren't just talking at you, that we're also getting hearing from you and finding ways for you to contribute in multiple ways. And that is part of capacity building, is to make sure that we hear from everyone. Everyone has the opportunity to contribute their viewpoints. And we know that collaborative problem solving, so working together, works better than one person working on an issue to try to solve an issue. So as we go through this hour together and we're using different tools to get you to interact and provide your feedback, think too about how members of your organizations may want to contribute if they're not able to attend in-person meetings. There are other ways, to get feedback and get them to join in on the conversation. So the first tool we're going to use is a poll, and there's 2 questions here in this poll. So I'm going to launch this in front of you. And as you see on the slide, the first question is, do you feel like your lake organization functions efficiently? And the second one is, do you feel like your lake organization functions effectively? Each question will have a 1 through 10, so you can choose 1, or you can go all the way up to 10 for each question. And this is just a way to get some feedback from you about how you feel your organization functions. So I just launched. Hopefully you can see the poll in front of you.
And it'll go to the second question after you answer the first question. It's my understanding, or do you just scroll down? Oh, you just scroll down. So you should be able to scroll down this giant poll window and see the 2 questions. And Sara and myself, we can see how many people responded. And we can see that in real time. So right now we've got 12 responses. We'd like to get all of you to respond if you can. Just take a look at this poll questions. First question is about efficiency. Second one about effectiveness.
Yeah, Rich has a great question in the chat. And thanks for using the chat. That's another tool we have available for us. So if you have questions or comments as we go, feel free to put them in the chat. He asks if you believe, or if you belong to several organizations, how many can you address? I think maybe just choose one to be the easiest here. Think of one, maybe the main one you're active in.
So a couple of people just came in. If you're just joining us, we just threw up a poll for people to respond to. And then we're going to take a look at the results just to get a feel for the people in the room, sort of where they believe their organizations are at. So give just a couple more seconds. And then do you want to close the poll, Sarah, so we can share results?
Yep, we have 31 out of 40. So a couple more seconds. If anyone else wants to jump in and answer the poll, that would be great. 77% have voted so far. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And I'm going to show the results. So hopefully you can share you can see the results on your screen. So question 1, do you feel your lake organization functions efficiently? So 1 through 10, 1, it takes a long time and uses a lot of resources to get anything done. Or 10, we achieve all of our goals with efficient use of resources, quick and easy. So you can see that one person answered 1, one person answered 3. Most are falling in the 7, 8 area, so functions pretty efficiently. No one answered 10. And then number 2 question, so you might have to scroll a little to see the results. Scroll down a little bit. Do you feel like your lake organization functions effectively? So we don't accomplish anything would be 1. Or 10, we accomplish a great deal and then some. We're very effective. So you can see again, there's some in that lower 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's most are falling in the 7, 8, 9 range. And then one person answered 10, which is we accomplish a great deal. So this is good feedback. Gives us a little bit of an idea of where you all are, where you're coming from, and how you kind of think about your effectiveness and your efficiency in your organization. So don't know, Eric, if you want to say anything else about these results.
I just saw another comment. One person said that they responded from the perspective of their neediest organization. So if you did that, that might skew our results a little bit towards the low end on both of the scales. But this is pretty, I think this is a good indicator that most groups are feeling pretty effective and pretty efficient. But there's enough people sort of in that middle range to suggest that more can be done. And we can't claim that we're going to solve all sorts of problems, but we're going to try to provide you with some tools and ideas that you could use in your local organizations in order to increase effectiveness and efficacy.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to jump into our capacity model here. You may have seen this before. Hopefully you have. Hopefully you've seen this in different Lake Tides articles that have gone out, or from Water Week or the convention. If you've attended in the last year or two, we've adopted this model of capacity from May Davenport, who is a professor in the Department of Forest Resources at University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And the model organizes capacity in these 4 main, I call them buckets. So we have membership at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's the foundation of our organizations. Our membership reflects the value of an organization to the population of its possible supporters. So the larger and more diverse your membership is, the stronger your organization is in general. Next is the organizational capacity, which concerns the inner workings of a group, how the board functions internally. Do people know what is expected of them? Are board members contributing their skills? Is there a transition plan? So those types of internal organization workings of a group. Beside that is the relational capacity, which focuses outward towards other groups and individuals in the larger community who can be of assistance to you, who can be of assistance to your group, and you can benefit from each other, benefit from collaborations. The more external support you have, the more relationships you have built up, make getting things done quicker and easier, more efficiently and more effectively. And then finally, that tip of the pyramid is where I think a lot of us are excited to work, and that's on the programs that make our bodies of water healthier. And these programs can be invasive species monitoring and removal, clean boats, clean waters, healthy lakes and rivers projects, and so on. But without the effective and efficient functioning internally, and without those external partners, and without a membership base, those programs you're really hoping to work on and the goals you're hoping to accomplish might be harder to reach. So Eric is now going to take us through a little history of lake organizations in Wisconsin, as well as explore why capacity. Why are we here talking about this today?
Yeah, thanks, Sara. So a lot of you are part of either a lake association or a lake district. I use this chart quite often just to kind of show that Wisconsin has a great long history of groups being involved in protecting lakes. And we're also still seeing a growth pattern of the number of lake organizations. Occasionally we get new lake associations that start, new nonprofit groups. And I saw a message in the chat, we are also seeing new lake districts form. So on a regular basis, almost like 4 to 5 new lake districts added per year to the state of Wisconsin. And this kind of shows that, yeah, that people care about lakes and they're willing to get together and organize. However, it's not as simple as just creating something and then voila, your problems are solved. What my statement up here reflects on is that it's not just the existence of a lake group that's going to solve problems. It really has to do with the quality of the lake group, the types of things that they're working on and how they organize themselves and how they carry out projects. And I've been in this position long enough to see that there is variation across the state in terms of how effective and efficient groups are. But I'd say it's still a little bit unknown or misunderstood or understudied to know what's going on inside these groups to differentiate the really highly effective ones from the ones that might be struggling. We also realize that, you know, we're not just creating groups or fostering more groups because that's an end into itself. The work that you do as groups fits into a bigger puzzle, and that's sort of what this chart is meant to show. Hopefully you've seen this puzzle before, but I'm just going to cover some of the really quick things. Across the top is this really neat, simplistic relationship, kind of going from watershed land use to runoff, to stream water quality, to lake water quality, and then eventually feeding right into quality of life. This is a relationship that we kind of understand pretty well. It's a landscape relationship. It has to do with the rain that's falling here in central Wisconsin right now and where that rain goes. And if it happens to go through areas that it picks up a lot of pollution, picks up sediment and nutrients and delivers those into lakes, then we won't be surprised if the lakes go downhill. If on the other hand, that watershed has intact forests and lots of impervious surfaces that allow the rainwater to soak into the ground, then we see better stream water quality and we see better lake water quality. So this relationship is pretty well understood. It's easy then to think about like, well, if you're in a impaired situation, if your water quality is not great and your watershed has challenges, we want to do something about it, right? We want to actually get out there and fix things. And so that's where my exclamation point is here on this chart. We engage all the time in different restoration activities. These can be really large scale. They can involve working with dozens of farmers to do thousands of acres of cover crop treatments in order to reduce runoff from farm fields. Could be really small things. It could be someone putting in a rain garden at their own house, or even putting in a rain barrel, or planting trees. All these activities can help mitigate the impacts of runoff on water quality. But these activities don't just happen by themselves. We know that these are the function of household decisions, the people who are members of your lake organization, as well as people who are not members or people who live around the lake. And it can be a result of your own activities as a lake association or a lake district. You have the ability to influence how much of these restoration activities get done that can mitigate this runoff. And we believe in extension and in the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources that there's something that can be done to boost your capacity, that we don't have to just look at the situation and say, oh, well, they only have so much capacity, so they can only get so much restoration activities accomplished. And so I guess their water quality is going to go downhill. We believe that we can do things to help boost capacity through capacity programming, which we're going to talk about today, in order to help you out. And we want to help you out because the state of Wisconsin, the university and the DNR have a responsibility as stewards of these resources to take care of them. It's beyond the scope of what the DNR could do by itself or beyond the scope of what extension could do by itself. But to go back to this chart, that's sort of why we help foster more organizations and why we're going to be focusing on their capacity going forward. So just to give you a sense of the scale of this, and I don't want this to be too depressing, but we look down to the Madison area and we see there's a really active group that's kind of come onto the scene just in the last decade or so to focus on the water quality challenges of the Yahara chain of lakes. That's Lake Mendota, Lake Monona, and 2 other downstream lakes, all in the upper watershed area of the Yahara River. And they went through some pretty in-depth analysis trying to figure out, well, what does it look like to get clear water? What do we have to accomplish? And most of their challenges, like a lot of lakes, is driven by phosphorus and nutrient reductions that are needed to meet water quality goals. So they kind of spelled it out. How much phosphorus? Let's get down to real specific brass tacks. They want 46,000 pounds of phosphorus to be taken out. And then they went through an exercise to say, well, let's look at the different ways that we could achieve these reductions and let's put a price tag on it. Let's figure out how much that's going to cost. And it turns out that if they want to go out and sort of help buy this conservation, it's going to cost on the order of $7 million a year. That's a lot of money. They're actually close to spending that amount of money, but they're not quite there. And they are seeing some water quality improvements, some of the benefits already of projects or programs that they've started just in the last few years. But it's a daunting proposition to think about $130 million over 20 years time period. Most of you look at that and you say, oh, but it gets worse. We looked at the Wisconsin River Basin. If we looked at the fine folks at, say, Lake Wisconsin or the Petenwell and Castle Rock flowages here in central Wisconsin, they're dealing with the entire Wisconsin River Basin or the upper Wisconsin and central Wisconsin River Basin. It's very large. It covers almost a quarter of the entire state of Wisconsin. And they looked at it and they say, well, we need to reduce, they have some really bad nutrient problems, right? If anyone's familiar with Petenwell and Castle Rock in the summer times, when they have some bad water quality, it can become really bad. If you look it up on Google Maps, I encourage you to do this at some time. Look at the land cover, the version of Google Maps that lets you see the water, and start zooming into some of the places on Petenwell and Castle Rock. You'll see some colors that you didn't think could be associated with water. Those aren't fake colors. That's the actual color that their water becomes when blue-green algae gets out of control. Their need is to reduce about 1 million pounds of phosphorus in that watershed. So let's just compare these two. Just for the Yahara and the chain of lakes, they're looking at 46,000 pounds with an expense of $130 million. Now we're talking about 1 million pounds. I think the price tag starts to get into the billions of dollars of what it might take if we wanted to sort of buy the conservation that we need to achieve water quality in Wisconsin. So we could just sort of do what maybe some people on this call want to do, which is just throw up your hands and say, well, that's not going to happen. Sorry, it's too bad. That's the way it's going to be. And I wouldn't blame any of you for saying that, for being like, this is going to be too expensive. Billions of dollars is not going to happen. But the reality that we see on the ground is that people don't do that. Some of them might, but a lot of people actually look at it and say, okay, well, how else can we do this then? If we're not going to spend $1 billion, what else can we do? And they're fortunate that there are things that you can do. There's things you can do voluntarily. There's things that don't cost a lot of money that have to happen on thousands of properties. There's ways you can persuade people to change behaviors. So in the case of farmers changing practices, we can talk to them and we can actually encourage people to do different farming. So we think there's ways that, again, through enhanced capacity, we can actually foster more of these restoration activities. We can meet this water quality challenge without necessarily spending the billions of dollars that it would be needed to buy our way into conservation. Instead, we're gonna work our way towards conservation, and that puts a lot of work on your shoulders. But I think you'll see that there's ways that we can do this, and it's part of what you've been doing already, probably as a lake group for years. So we're gonna pause here and let you chime in a little bit. We wanted you to brainstorm a little and give us some feedback along these questions. The first question is the first one we want to hear from you is when we talk about a high capacity organization, a group that gets a lot of things done, and does it sort of efficiently, what comes to your mind? What's the name of a group that you would say, wow, they are high capacity? And I'm not limiting us to lake associations or lake districts, anything. Who gets things done? So here is the chat. Some of you found it already.
And these could be like local, state, national, international organizations.
So I put my answer in the chat. So I took that if someone else was thinking about it. Feel free to use the chat and you can see what other people are writing. So Environment Minnesota, Clean Lakes Alliance, Foxwell Watershed Alliance. So don't limit yourself to water stuff. We're talking about who are you sort of jealous of when you think about, boy, if our lake group could work the way that group works, or that organization, that entity, then we'd really start knocking things out of the park. AARP, it's a good one, Jerry, thanks for that. Got some other local groups, Discovery Center up north by Manitowish Waters.
Yeah, and then feel free to add to your answer of why. Some of you have already done that. So I see John saying they're very well organized and funded, highly focused, completes their annual goals. So why did those organizations come to mind?
So I'd put in, when I said the US military, I think they're well funded. I'm a little bit familiar with the federal budget, and I know that quite a bit of it, actually, our tax dollars goes to fund the military. And that's, I'm not judging it or evaluating. I'm just saying, I know that as an organization, they have the money to do what they want to do. Some other people say a full spectrum of support. UPS and Federal Express are good examples of groups that are organized and efficient. They get things done. Funding is a bonus. Any other features about high capacity organizations? Amazon. Google says they do whatever they want. They used to have a mantra at Google that was, I think, something like do no evil. Try not to be an evil organization. Pheasants Forever. High relationships, work with other groups. They stick to their goals, right? Thinking of like those delivery services, yes, we see like UPS and FedEx, they pretty much stick to the delivery of goods. They kind of, sometimes they go into some related things, but they don't get into, say, running a K-12 school system or creating a lake organization. Cool. Mission focus, that's a good one too. There's books written about how to lead and operate highly functional organizations. Some of these books are actually written by corporate leaders from these entities. Some of these groups that we talked about are groups that are probably more top-down driven. When I mentioned the military, the other thing I keep in mind about military is that there's a hierarchical chain of command. There's a system of understanding who gives orders and who receives orders, and it's fairly well understood. And there are sanctions if you don't follow orders. So that's one way of organizing things, is sort of in a military command and control type of system. There's other groups that do operate in much more of a flexible, sort of what we call maybe a horizontal organization, because a lot of people maybe just be looking to draw on their strengths, and you're not going to sit around and wait for a command to be given, but people just go out and start tackling problems. Strategic planning is a good example of how sometimes, especially a group that is more flat or horizontal, they still may need to come up with a good strategic plan to make sure that people are all pulling in the same direction and working towards a common goal. They're run by a committee. They're not run by a committee. Dictator comes to mind. Yeah, in some situations, the dictatorial structure can get you to the finish line. What we see in lakes, and this is kind of why I think it's exciting to work with you all, and why natural resources I think are really great too. The thing about lakes is that I own part of all the lakes in Wisconsin, and so does Sara and Mike, and so do a lot of you. The lakes in Wisconsin are public goods. They're commonly owned, and yet they're surrounded in many cases, in most cases, by private property, shoreline property owners, who then band together to form the groups that you work with, lake associations and lake districts. And so in that kind of context, where there's a public good and private goods, and we're kind of going to try and co-manage these resources, it's pretty rare that a command and control or a top-down method is going to accomplish things. Instead, we have to come up with collaborative natural resource management strategies. And that's really the project that the Lakes Partnership has been embarked on for 50 years now. It's trying to collaborate between private actors, organizations, local governments, the state of Wisconsin, to jointly manage natural resources. So, we're ready to go into breakouts? Sara?
We are. So this is just another tool we have. We want to hear from you, and this is partly I want to see where your ideas are, where you're coming from. What are some of your ideas? What are you experiencing in your organization? So we're putting you into some breakout rooms. There's about 5 people in each room, and I will put this in the chat. This is a Google Doc that if you or someone in your group can access this, hopefully you will have access to it and you won't run into any issues with access. So let me know if you do. At the bottom, you'll see group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. You'll have to pay attention to what group you're in, what group you're going into, because you'll each use a different tab. And this is just kind of one document separated in the different breakout rooms, so that you each have a clean sheet to work on. And what we're asking you is just to have some discussion, get to know each other, and find out what things you're doing, what you've seen other organizations, kind of what we were just talking about, what other lake organizations, what it might look like to have high capacity. Maybe it is something you're doing, and then just write it down there. It's kind of like a brainstorm. I want to hear from you of what you're doing, or what it would look like to have a high capacity as an organization. And you can check mark if it's a membership, if it relates to membership, if it relates to those inner workings of your organization, if it's a relationship, so the outer, looking outward at building relationships, or if it's more of that tip of the pyramid programs. Or you can just list a whole bunch of ideas, and that is fine too. So hopefully someone in your group will have access to this spreadsheet, and you can just start typing. Identify in your group who wants to type, who wants to take notes, who wants to maybe question people. Make sure everyone has a voice. Again, we want everyone to participate. And then we'll come back together. And I don't know if we'll have time to share out when we come back together, but at least this is something good that we'll all have then access to at a later time. So I'm going to open breakout rooms. Let me know if you have any questions. You should be able to then choose. It'll pop up and say you've been invited to room 5 or 6, and you should be able to then enter. Welcome back, everyone. It's so hard to leave breakout rooms. It's hard to go into breakout rooms at first, because you're like, oh no, what do I talk about? And then once you get going, it's it's hard to leave because such good conversations get started, and I wanted to stay and I wanted to hear more and continue to talk. So I hope you all felt the same way and had some good conversations and just get to know each other a little bit more. So before we end, by the end of the hour, make sure you get people's contact information if you may, if you want to reach out and continue to have these conversations with everyone. So thank you for spending some time in those breakout rooms. I was able to visit just one and really wanted to stay with John and John. I was with two Johns just to learn more about their organizations and what's happening. And this is just a good tool to get to know each other. So I hope you all enjoyed that. And I did look at the Google Doc, and it looks like there's a lot of great notes there. So thank you for taking notes on that. You have that link now. You can go back to it if it helps you, if you want to peek in at the other tabs at the bottom to see what other groups were recording, you can do that. But this will also help me just to go back to look at what you all were talking about in your breakout rooms. So let's see. Do we have time? We probably don't have time to really go into sharing out there. So this is the problem with 1 hour. We want to talk about so much and we just don't have enough time. What we want to do now is we want to share a little bit of time or share a little bit of our capacity results with you. And Eric's going to jump into that.
Yeah. So hopefully some of you filled out a survey about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than a year ago, maybe a little bit after a year ago. But this is our first attempt to try to go out statewide and sort of ask questions of people who are on boards of either lake districts or lake associations to complete a survey that just sort of systematically gauged where you're all at. So it's a little bit similar to the quick Zoom survey we started off with, a little bit different. It was a little more involved. Thank you to anyone who did fill it out. And we are still sort of digesting these survey results and trying to pick them apart and figure out ways that we can use what came out of that survey. But I also want to comment that the survey is meant as sort of a benchmark. It's an indicator of where we were at circa 2000. And given that 2000 was kind of weird, it shouldn't have influenced too much how people filled out the survey because it was really just a reflection on what people think about their lake association or lake district. And we're trying to then set up a time frame where we would say in 2005 or 2006, repeat this, I'm sorry, 2015. I forgot what time I'm in. 2025 or 2026, repeat the survey, gauge how things might be changing over time. And part of what we'd be looking at is ways to show that, oh, well, if the state of Wisconsin, if the DNR and extension and Wisconsin lakes kind of put some pedal to the metal as far as trying to increase capacity, maybe groups show that in terms of how they answer the survey. We would hope that we'd have some positive influence. And really part of the reason why 2020 was a good year to do this, I didn't mention this earlier, is that we were able to hire Sara as part of our team to work specifically on capacity building strategies and to really hone in on what we could do out of extension lakes, working with other groups. So we really are hoping to move the needle, but this gives us the baseline. This tells us where people were at in 2020. So here you've probably been able to look at the slide and see, a good number of people. This is just a raw number of board members who responded in this way that were effective. And really this kind of matches a lot what our survey was earlier this hour. A lot of people in sort of that agree, not as many people in that strongly agree. Some people in that somewhat agree. Another question we asked, and we didn't ask it in the poll just now, was, do you have a benchmark? Do you have a way to really know that you're on track? So some sort of indicator that the board, through some sort of planning process, has said, this is where we need to be. Here you see a lot more people actually over in this area, somewhat disagreeing, neither agreeing, or somewhat agreeing. Fewer people, if you kind of compare, I'll bounce back and forth. Over here, as far as being effective, we had over 180, close to 190 people agreeing, 90 people saying they strongly agree. On this next one, strongly agree, almost cut in half. and the number of agreeing reduced quite a bit as well. So benchmarks and sort of knowing, it's kind of interesting to say that, oh, they believe they're effective, but they're not sure exactly how they know they're effective because they may not have benchmarks. And one of the questions we asked too is just, would you like to learn more about ways that you can improve your ability? And here, this is sort of for us in Extension Lakes, it says, yes, people are looking for this type of information. Your presence here today reaffirms that. And so thank you for coming in and learning about where we're at in this process. Lots of people agreeing or strongly agreeing, or even somewhat agreeing that they want some help, learning about ways to improve their abilities. We also asked a more open-ended question, kind of what specifically are you looking for right now? And you can see a lot of people there talking about some things that we talked about in our breakout group just now, which is succession planning, concerns that the board is made up of folks that are retired and older and may not be on the board much longer because they need to step down. So where does that succession come from, and how do we recruit more people into our organization? Lots of people having concerns about funding, making sure that they're sustainably funded, maybe not to this extent that the US military is, but having some stable funding. Thinking about lake management planning came up there quite a bit. Not as many people, kind of interesting that not as many folks focused on like ecology of lakes or the functioning of water bodies per se, but most people saying, if it's not these, then maybe AIS is a big issue. That also came up in our breakout discussion. This is the kind of information that we're using to kind of steer where Eric and Sarah spend their time working on these challenges. And I'd like to say that we've got it all figured out and the plan is done, but it still is sort of in development. And I'll concede right now that the last year has been tough because having good conversations with lake associations or even a group of lake association representatives like today, it's hard to have really meaningful engagement through a computer screen. It's much more likely that we would get a more robust conversation and we could read people's reactions better if we were face to face. So the last year has been tough, but we're undaunted. We're going to keep going, and we put this on the agenda as far as these Thursday workshops because we knew like we should at least share where we're at today and talk about where we're going to be headed next. These are just some other ways when we talk about ways to, in the session we had just now, the breakouts, how would you know if you were there? We're going to be looking at these more systematically to understand like what I'm calling just sort of objective indicators of your lake organizations. There's information that we can glean from how long you've been in existence, or how big is your budget? Does it coincide with the scale of challenges? Do you participate in programs like Citizens Lake Monitoring Network or Clean Boats and Clean Waters? Are you partnering with other groups? Are you demonstrating relational capacity? Are you engaging in healthy lakes projects? We're fortunate in Wisconsin now to have sort of a suite of on-the-shelf, ready to roll, small scale, relatively small scale things you can do to protect your lakes. So let's see who's actually picking those up and running with them. And then looking at things like proactive protection activities. Are you working with land trusts and putting easements in place? So we're going to be monitoring these over time as well. And all this, again, fits back into what we're trying to do as far as capacity programming. You're here because you've heard something about it. You saw that we shared this event online. Maybe you've been reading our newsletter articles, but this is kind of informing what we're doing now. Sarah, did you want to talk about these?
Yeah, and I know we don't have too much time left, but I do want to jump into some of those things that we're looking forward to helping you with. We want to develop tools. We want to develop samples that you can take and modify and use in your organizations. We want to be able to help you increase your capacity. I want, again, like I said at the beginning, if you have things that you use, if you have tools, if you have processes that work for you, I'd love to see them and learn from you. And also, if you're doing something amazing that really works for your organization, I'd love to share it with others as well. Maybe, not say this is from this organization, but just be able to share some really stellar examples. So for membership capacity, so that base of the capacity pyramid, 3 things we're really hoping to help you with is that recruitment plan. So I heard in the breakout room, membership. How do we increase our membership? I'd love to see some really great membership recruitment plans. So do you have a plan? Do you have something documented? If so, please share it with me. And I'd love to develop one that all of you can then take and use, make work for your organization. Engaging members in multiple ways, kind of like we're doing now virtually. What other in person? What are other ways we can engage our members so that we're hearing all voices, that we give everyone an opportunity to interact and engage with us? And then communicating successes. Great if you have a great membership, but we want the membership to know what you all are doing. What are the successes? Tell your story. You know, have them feel like they're part of the organization. So that's one piece we really want to work on. This organizational capacity piece is something that you participated in. Well, a few of you participated in before the meeting. In the confirmation email that I sent to get this link for this meeting, there was a link in there for you to complete a survey. I think 7. I just looked recently. There was 7 who completed the survey. So thank you. So this is this was a skills gap analysis board matrix tool where you could ask your board, what are their skills and where are we lacking? What do we need? So you don't want maybe the whole board to be made up of people with the same skills, and then you're left without someone or a lot of people to do a lot of these other things because you just haven't recruited for that particular skill. So I can show after these, I can show the results if you all want to stay on to see what those 5 to 7 people had said if we were an organization where our skills would be lacking. And it was pretty eye-opening to see, like, there's a lot of out of the 7 people that completed the survey, there were a lot of areas, a lot of skills that we still needed to recruit for. So it's just a good exercise to do with your board. And we have examples to send you if you're interested in doing that, which I would recommend. Position descriptions, something easy to know. What am I doing? What is my role on the board? Do we have position descriptions for everyone on the board? And then an evaluation process so that people that are on the board know how they're doing on the board. So position descriptions for different board positions, whether it's president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, but also if you have other positions on the board, are there unique responsibilities that you really want someone to have? We need someone to do some certain things on our board, and maybe you recruit specifically for these certain tasks. So that might be what would be in the position descriptions. And I have a few that some organizations have shared with me, and we will have those available on our website as well. Next is then the relational and programmatic. So relational is identifying the potential partners, inviting them to contribute. So having your board come up with a list of partners. Who do we work with? Who do we partner with? Who do we still need to reach out with? How do we increase our collaborations and partnerships with those external groups and individuals? Partnering with others on projects, not just your own projects, but reaching out and helping other organizations work on projects that benefit their organizations. So that give and take, how can we help you developing those collaborations? And then something else I've heard in the breakout room is maybe local officials. So developing relationships with local and state elected officials to really build those partnerships so you can move to where you want to move without someone shooting it down, is what I heard in the breakout room, is someone kind of saying, nope, we're not moving forward with this. So really developing those good collaborations with your local and state elected officials. And then finally, we've already talked about programmatic, those programs that you all work with. There's 3 listed there, but these are just 3 ideas. When you think of high capacity organizations, there might be a lot of healthy lakes and rivers programs, projects happening around the lake. There might be Clean Boats, Clean Waters, and a lot of volunteers involved in the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. this is a lot of information we're throwing at you right now. But what we're hoping to do, and I don't know if it's on the next slide, Eric, is the next steps. Well, we want to make sure that you know that we have a newsletter that goes out quarterly. It's free. We hope you all get it. There is a capacity piece in each newsletter, and we hope not just you all get it, but that all of your organizational members have the option to get it as well, that they know that this resource exists. And that we have our website where we'll be sharing all of these tools with all of you, so you can download materials and find it all on our website. And I don't know, Eric, if there's anything you want to add about that.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
And then next, do you want to go to the website?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
see if I can make that work.
Sure.
So you see my web page,
Yes.
and if you click on capacity corner here, you start to see that this is actually getting developed a little more. There's sort of an overview if you want to see that. But we have it kind of organized along those that we mentioned: membership, organizational relationship, and programs, as well as an area of resources. So clicking on each one gets you a little bit of an explanation and an overview of what we're working on. You'll find links. What we're trying to do is essentially repeat a cycle of covering the 4 different parts in the newsletter. So all the archives are in there. And that's the case for each different piece. Whoops. Back. Where we're really starting to park some things is under resources. So as we find out about things, as new tools are developed, we're going to be organizing them here. Again, you see that structure of membership, organizational relationship, programmatic. The one thing I would also add to this is that we are trying to support the department's effort to really get high quality surface water grant applications in. We're really fortunate in Wisconsin that there's an annual cycle of cost share money that's available for everything from small scale capacity building efforts that you want to do as a lake organization internally to large scale project implementation, up to $200,000 of state money to help you implement something, to carry out your plans, to everything in between. We want to see a lot of people competing for those grants, and we want to see really excellent projects getting proposed. If I want to think of a way to know that all of you are really kicking butt and we're really moving the ball forward, it's going to be because we need to increase the amount of money in that grant program, because there's so many great projects that we need to spend more than $6 million of state money. We can make a case that we need to spend $8 or $10 million because there's so many good projects, and that's going to be a reflection of what you all are up to. So we'd encourage you to check out this webpage. It's going to be something that's a continual work in progress, but it's something that we want to make available for you. So someone commented they've only been to the Clean Boat Clean Waters pages. Our webpage has a lot of information. We're going to be changing it a little bit in the future because the university is changing their platform, but we're going to try and still have a massive amount of information that you can use with your organization. And the material I just showed you, just again, so you know, if you were at the Extension Lakes page, we have something of a shortcut down here in the highlights section, and one of them is Capacity Corner. So just clicking on that gets you there. I feel like I need to go back to the slides. This is not it though.
So one thing that we want to do next steps, and I know it's after 5 o'clock, so we appreciate you hanging on here, is to, I'd love to meet with people who are really interested in building their capacity. Maybe it's some type of like an advisory group. Maybe we meet quarterly, just to help me understand what you need and how we can work together to build the capacity and develop tools that will help other organizations build their capacity as well. So think about, if you're interested, if you have, if you're like, yes, I want to spend some time helping with this. I'd love to meet with you virtually. first, and then maybe actually in person throughout the summer or over the next year. And I also am thinking about how to just meet with groups individually to talk through needs. So on a one-on-one basis. So I'm gonna put this doodle in the chat, and I'm gonna follow up with this as well in an email. I'll follow up with if you're interested in meeting as an advisory group, or if you just are interested in like office hours, just chatting with me about your needs, maybe some struggles you're having, and how we might be able to help you. I put a doodle poll there so you can like sign up for an appointment. I don't know how that will work, but we're going to try to see. And then also we'll be following up with a survey and an email. So watch for that, just to give us some feedback. Continue to give us some feedback, because this is an area that we're developing. And we're just going to end with another poll. So thanks for hanging out with us. I am going to see if I can launch the next poll. Poll 2. There we go. So our last poll is, do you feel like your organization has an opportunity to grow capacity? So I know we just talked a lot about a lot of stuff. And if you say no, that's great. If you say no, I'd love to talk with you and meet with you about, to learn from you. And if you don't know, that's fine too. But we're just hoping, to get a feel for where you are and if you feel like your organization has an opportunity to grow capacity. Right, we have 2 more people to maybe vote or respond. 1 more person to respond, and then we'll have 100% participation in the poll. But let's say we have 100%. Thank you all for completing that poll. We're going to end the polling, and I'm going to share the results. So what we have right now is yes. So 20 of you said yes. You that's why you're here, maybe, right? Is to learn how to grow your capacity. And then a couple of people said, I don't know yet, and that's great. That's fine. It takes a long time to really wrap your head around capacity and what it means for you and your organization. So we appreciate you being here. Hang out if you have questions. We're here to stay on, and I'm happy to answer questions or have a conversation. Otherwise, our emails are there, and I'll be following up with another email to all of you. But thank you. Thank you for being here. And we'll hopefully see you next Thursday on the next Thursday webinar, Thursday at 4 o'clock. Yes, have a great, safe Memorial Day weekend, everyone. Enjoy.
Stay warm. It's going to be chilly. And again, if you want to stick around, we'll stick around too.
Feel free to unmute if you want to chat.
Deborah had a question about registering for subsequent meetings. Yes, so I can show you on the screen too real quick. Go back to Extension Lakes, go into Thursday's webinar series. So we have recordings up for all the previous Thursday. And this is also part of, I think, building capacity, is just being able to share this type of content with you. Electronic communications, websites, and Lake Kit. Mike, I think, is still on the call. This is sort of his presentation on June 3rd. And you just register the same way you would registered for this workshop. We're using a platform that just allows us to sort of set this up almost like we're running a little school system, and it allows us to see who's registering for things. So register for future workshops here. We're going to kind of take a bit of a summer pause after June 10th. But we know there's going to be some of these webinars in the fall as well, if nothing else, to meet some of the needs for lake districts to go through some of the financial steps they need to do. Other
We're
questions?
just trying to get back together with our county association, as obviously we were pretty well knocked out last year.
Yeah.
And we may be Zooming for the first couple of months or so and then get back together. But I would greatly appreciate if you and Sarah perhaps could be speakers one Saturday morning. And in turn, I and maybe a couple more people would join your advisory discussion groups. Quid pro quo.
Proco, I was gonna say you could take us on a ride on the lake or something. We
I'll
could go
take you
see
for a
that.
ride on the lake, absolutely.
Oh, that's
We've got a
great.
nice
Rich.
little lake
Um,
here.
Countywide organizations are definitely part of what we think of in terms of this network and the capacity out there. Because, for example, there's going to be people who live on lakes that are too small to have a lake association, and they still might want to get involved in how the county is making decisions. So even though there's only 8 property owners on their little